This random plumber Mario always seemed to end up just about anywhere, and yet he was confined to the player's home. Now, with a new Nintendo Game Boy and its launch title Super Mario Land, he could truly go anywhere. There are two very notable things about this new system. Firstly, the screen is tiny, which may not be very obvious with modern technology being able to increase the display size, so perhaps it should look more like this. Now, even at this size, the second notable thing is clear: there is no color. Can players even tell what's going on? In their first attempt at a handheld Mario adventure, Nintendo chose to make the sprites very small even in comparison to the screen, which didn't leave a lot of room for detail. So on the surface it may look pretty bleh, but graphics aren't everything, and they never were going to pop out on this device. Super Mario Land takes place not in the Mushroom Kingdom, but in Sarasa Land, which contains 4 unique kingdoms. What is Bowser doing with the princess all the way out there? Nothing. But Mario is basically on the same mission in a different place with a different princess to rescue from a different enemy. Princess Daisy has been captured by Tatanga, a space alien. It's almost like a parody within its own series, replacing the location and all characters other than Mario. At the start, Super Mario Land feels a lot like the very first Super Mario Bros. Gone wrong. Well, maybe not wrong, gone weird. Mario's controls are clunky, although they might be a little easier to handle than the first NES title. Clearly Nintendo were back to battling the basic limitations, as the screen can only scroll to the right, again just like in the original adventure in which it was impossible to backtrack. These limitations aside, the first levels add to the feeling that Nintendo was making a parody of their own game. The Super Mushroom was of course back, causing Mario to grow and take an extra hit if needed. There was also a flower power-up which could be collected if Mario was in his super form, but it was not the classic fire flower. Instead, we have the Super Ball Flower. Tap the B button to shoot a Super Ball. The Super Ball bounces off all surfaces and has no care for gravity. You can only have one on screen at a time, though. This new restriction, as well as the ball's inability to stay close to the ground, where the enemies are, makes it very difficult to use and not nearly as loved as the Fire Flower. In fact, it was never even brought back in a future Mario game aside from Super Mario Maker 2. As a small bonus, it could collect coins for Mario, which was useful in any bonus rooms you can discover throughout the levels. They were often filled with coins, and as is normal in the series, collecting 100 coins is the same as collecting a 1-up. Sadly, the Ball Flower is the only maximum power-up in Super Mario Land, but you can also discover 1-ups, now taking the form of a heart, and the iconic Invincibility Star, which now has the Can-Can as its music. Birabudo Kingdom is the first location visited, and the subtle background details make it feel distant from the Mushroom Kingdom. Familiar foes will be seen, with Goombas looking even more useless than usual, and Koopas with a surprise twist. They sort of still resemble turtles, only this time if you stomp on them, the shell will stay in place and explode after a short pause. It's completely bizarre, and the explosion is so tiny that it should hardly ever cause problems, and again feels like a parody. However, I have a sneaking feeling that there are some issues programming the Koopa shell to behave in the same way as before, as Mario doesn't have any advanced interactions with objects throughout the game. Besides these two returning enemies, the others are all unique to Sarasa Land. Many of the new enemies resemble Moai, which is certainly a strange choice, but it makes this kingdom feel ancient or even sacred. I definitely get this vibe from the third and final level of the kingdom too, which takes place in a temple with a crumbling ceiling as an obstacle. It only falls when Mario passes under it though, so there must be some kind of special ancient technology for that to happen. I also like the enemy choice in this cave because it adds more to this idea. Piranha plants are in Sarasa Land too, as a hazard moving in and out of pipes, but it's really ruled by spiders, as if the temple was abandoned. Not completely abandoned, however, as the Sphinx-like Gao enemies are still around and breathing fire. It's worth noting that while you might not call it hard, the first world isn't as simple as you would expect. Yes, the first level is mostly flat, which is in line with the traditional first levels in the series, but it's still less flat than usual, and the enemy density is a little higher than I expected too. If you're struggling with how Mario moves, those enemies might make it tricky for you. All in all, that is unlikely, but the other two levels in World 1 are another step up. Level 1-3 in that temple or cave or whatever could already prove to be a barrier when you first start playing. Fortunately, this game is more generous than many other games of its time, and to help with getting through, it's pretty easy to gain extra lives. As previously mentioned, and as with previous Mario titles, you can occasionally find 1-ups from question blocks in the levels, and collecting 100 coins will also give a 1-up. I felt that there were significantly more coins to collect than before, which is just the first reason it's easier to gain lives. The big addition is that there are 2 doors at the end of a level, one high and one low. The low door just moves you on, but the high door allows you to play a bonus game. Accessing the high doors never involves any big risks, so they're always worthwhile. You could win a Super Ball flower from this bonus, or you could get 1 to 3 extra lives. This bonus game is also guaranteed to appear in between worlds, so there are a lot of chances to stock up. You can even get an extra life from accumulating 100,000 points in your score, so the score isn't entirely useless for once, but this doesn't happen often. At the end of a tougher level in 1-3, there's a not-so-tough boss. This is the King Todomesu, a larger gal. He can shoot fireballs and jump up and down, but the slow movement makes him very easy to bypass. In the cell behind him, there's Daisy already, with the very emotional text on the screen, "Thank you, Mario." "Oh, Daisy." She then rudely turns into a bug and hops away. It really left me wondering if our princess was in another castle. Moving on to World 2, in stark contrast, Muda Kingdom feels very futuristic. While there's no animation for it, it appears that Mario enters this kingdom via spaceship, landing on platforms above the water. Skeleton fish jump out of the water, but with no horizontal movement, which is much easier to dodge than the series' previous infamous flying fish. Adding further to the futuristic theme, Mario will also encounter some robotic enemies with very curious functions, such as detaching their heads to create an extra obstacle. Once again, the world lasts for 3 levels, this time ending underwater, and instead of swimming, Mario has a submarine called the Marine Pop. It even has its own projectiles to fend off any danger. This level also features the 4th song used in the game already. The original Super Mario Bros. Featured only 4 songs across all 32 levels, and the variety in Super Mario Land was much better, including 5 main songs and some additional themes to share over 12 levels. Oh, wait, 12 levels? With the Game Boy being such a tiny piece of hardware to carry around, it appeared to be impossible to make extended games when it was first released. Super Mario Land is tiny, which makes it hard to rate very highly even when factoring in hardware limitations. It's decent content, and undoubtedly a more unique 2D Mario title worth playing, but being halfway done after 6 levels is a very weird feeling. The 2 remaining worlds are Eastern Kingdom and Chai Kingdom, and there's a notable increase in difficulty, as well as the length of levels. Many people remember Chai Kingdom as a very challenging end to the game, although I actually found Eastern Kingdom to be slightly harder. The length of the levels hits very suddenly for starters, and the imperfect physics don't help with the required platforming. Multiple levels contain a long stretch of riding on bouncing boulders, which is a lot easier than it sounds and ends up as a boring filler. On the other hand, it can also be unfair if you miss your ride and have to wait for another boulder, and then it suddenly just appears out of thin air right in your face and you die. 2 of the 3 levels take place in a cave or temple, like at the end of Birabudo Kingdom, and these levels are an even bigger difficulty increase. It's not terrible level design by any means, but no one would be prepared for it. It also ends with a boss that I couldn't quite pass as intended, and the time spent on it made me dislike the minuscule loop of the boss music. Instead, I was able to just take damage once and pass right through. I found Chai Kingdom to be more enjoyable. There was nothing notable about the level designs, but they felt solid the whole way through. It's based on Chinese mythology and is set in a bamboo forest and also in a mountain range. Famously, the music consists of mostly 4th chords, which is a stereotypical chord associated with Chinese music, but composer Hip Tanaka made a very cheerful upbeat tune to go with the levels nearing the end of the game. It still feels very weird that 4-3 is already the end of the game, but it's an auto-scroller similar to 2-3 and a very difficult one. This time we're in the sky, and Mario is controlling the Sky Pop, which is apparently his very own airplane. Naturally, it's going to end with a tough battle against a cloud-shaped enemy throwing chickens back at you. I mean, how else? That's not all though, because you may notice that we haven't met Tatanga yet. Tatanga is an even tougher fight, and you'll have to defeat both bosses in the same attempt to finish the game. I was having trouble with Tatanga, and he's absolutely a fitting into the game, although thankfully, after taking a different approach and staying far away while shooting, I beat it very quickly. At last, Daisy is real, and Mario takes her away on a spaceship, which is obviously the most romantic thing to do after someone's already been kidnapped by a space alien. When I first felt how the game controlled, I did not expect much from this game. To my surprise, I actually had a very good time playing it. The content overall is good. It's engaging and charming and is a solid debut for the Game Boy. It's just unfortunately very hard to rate highly when the technical challenges made it so short. Strictly speaking, it doesn't stop after those 12 levels, because like with most games of its time, it then loops back to the beginning with an extra challenge. I tried this new loop, and it is indeed a lot harder, adding more enemies all over the place. Of course, this is just to keep you busy on a long car journey, and I don't view it as extra content. So while it's a good game, even with retro context in mind, it's simply too short. Therefore, my final score for Super Mario Land will be 7 out of 10. It's a short game and a decent challenge because a game over will send you back to the beginning, but you could sit down and play it any time if you're bored. I would recommend it if that's what you're looking for. Sadly, that's not the easiest thing to do these days on official hardware if you don't have a functional Game Boy lying around. It was released on the 3DS Virtual Console, which is no longer available, and for some reason, at the time of writing, it still hasn't been made available on the Switch's retro library. Super Mario Land would get a sequel on the Game Boy, which alternatively can be played on Switch. Tell me, did you agree with the points I've made? What rating would you give Super Mario Land for the Game Boy, initially released in 1989? On your way to the comments, I hope you consider liking and subscribing. These YouTube stats don't lie, I can see that most review viewers aren't subscribed. As ever, thank you for watching, and please continue to be your own unique self. No, I can see how dumb I look. Thank you very much.